If you're ready for a tale where humanity defies fear itself, make sure to like this video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories where humans prove why the galaxy will never forget us. Now let's begin. The chamber of the Galactic Council trembled with anxious voices. Vast tiers of alien delegates shimmered in ceremonial silks and armored carapaces, all speaking at once, all demanding an impossible solution. The Predator had been sighted again. Entire fleets had gone dark. Worlds along the frontier reported nothing but silence. Everyone feared the same conclusion: the Krythar had returned. Captain Elias Karan leaned back in his seat near the edge of the circular hall. His chair had no gilded arms, no protective shield, no attendants at his side. Unlike the others, he wore plain service blacks, a uniform stripped of rank badges long ago. He did not speak. He simply watched. His calm unsettled them more than their own panic. The High Speaker, a towering avian with feathers of iridescent bronze, struck her staff for silence. Delegates, colleagues, friends, we face annihilation. The Krythar has destroyed 6 patrol squadrons in 3 days. Our intelligence cannot track its movements. Every hunter we send dies. Every weapon we fire shatters upon its hide. What course remains but eradication at any cost? Murmurs of agreement swelled, though laced with despair. Elias noticed how not one delegate suggested leading the charge themselves. They wanted someone else to bleed for their decisions. He had seen it before, in different uniforms on different battlefields. Some things never changed, not even among the stars. An insectoid ambassador chittered through a translator sphere. Deploy more war fleets. Do not hesitate. Crush it. Another voice boomed, deep and guttural, from a tusked mammalian warlord. If 1 fleet fails, send 5. 5 fail, send 50. Drown the beast in fire. Elias finally spoke, his voice even, cutting through the clamor. And when 50 fleets fall as easily as 6? The chamber stilled. Eyes, lenses, and compound gaze turned toward the lone human. Some bristled, others sneered. The council tolerated him because Earth had proven inconvenient to ignore, but they did not respect him. His bluntness was unwelcome in halls built on ritual and posturing. Human advisor, the High Speaker said sharply. Do you mean to counsel surrender? No, Elias replied. I mean to counsel sense. You can't fight this thing the way you fight each other. You've been throwing steel and plasma at it for centuries, and what's changed? It's still here. You've only made it angrier. A reptilian noble hissed. Primitive words from a primitive species. What would you propose? That we offer a tribute? That we kneel? Elias leaned forward, forearms on the table. His gaze was steady, voice low. I propose you stop thinking of it as a target and start treating it as what it is. A predator. You can't outgun it. But predators can be understood. They can be tracked. Sometimes even guided. Laughter broke out, brittle and mocking. The idea of guiding the Krythar, the scourge of empires, destroyer of armadas, seemed beyond absurd to them. Yet Elias did not flinch. The High Speaker waved a feathered hand. Your advice is noted. But the Council will act. Our civilizations demand blood for blood. We will not wait to be hunted like prey. Mobilize every defense fleet. Position them along the coreward approaches. This beast will meet the full fury of the Council. Delegates erupted in chants and cries of unity. They needed the sound of their own courage to smother the fear clawing at their bones. Elias rose quietly from his seat. One of the Council guards, a hulking saurian with ceremonial spear, sneered as he passed. Your kind should stay silent, human. This is no battlefield of mud and iron rifles. This is war among the stars. Elias didn't bother answering. The guard wouldn't understand. None of them would. He walked out of the chamber, boots ringing on polished stone, until the doors shut behind him and the roar of debate faded into silence. He stood alone in the outer balcony, staring at the velvet black of space. Beyond those stars lurked the Krythar, vast, unrelenting, cunning. To most it was a nightmare-given form. To Elias it was something else. A test. Maybe even an opportunity. A courier drone buzzed past, bearing sealed orders. News feeds already blared with images of fleets rallying, proud banners streaming from star dreadnoughts. The Council's response would be swift, overwhelming, and utterly predictable. Elias knew how it would end. Metal torn apart like paper. Thousands dead. Nothing gained. He rested his hands on the rail, remembering the weight of a leash in one hand and the tension of muscle on the other end. The first dog he had trained, feral, scarred, impossible to break by beatings, had looked at him with the same dangerous light he imagined in the Krythar's eyes. Everyone else had called it untrainable. Elias had called it misunderstood. Behind him, footsteps approached. A fellow human, Commander Darius Hale, his second and only friend in this citadel of fear, joined him. Darius was younger, broad-shouldered, with a scar running from brow to cheek. "They didn't listen," Darius said. "It wasn't a question." "They never do," Elias replied. "So what now? Let them throw fleets into the grinder?" Elias's jaw tightened. "They'll have to. It's the only way they learn. But I won't stand by while billions die because the council refuses to admit it's outmatched." Darius frowned. "You're not talking about volunteering." "I am," Elias said simply. "But not with fleets. Alone." The silence between them deepened. Stars glittered in Elias's eyes like cold sparks. "You'll never come back," Darius said. "Maybe. But if I don't try, nobody will. Someone has to face it without fear. If that's a human's role in this galaxy, so be it." Darius swallowed hard. He wanted to argue, but he saw the resolve in Elias's face, the kind carved into bone by years of combat and choices no one else dared make. He only nodded. "Then I'll cover for you as long as I can." From within the chamber came the sudden blare of alarms. A messenger AI projected itself into the air before them. Its mechanical voice was steady, but the tremor in its code was clear. "Attention. The Krythar has entered council space." Elias's lips curved into something not quite a smile. At last the storm was here. Darius grabbed his arm. "You don't have a plan." "I have a voice," Elias said, breaking away. "Let's see if that's enough." He strode toward the hangar bays as klaxons wailed and fleets scrambled, banners unfurling in panic. Behind him, the council howled for war, blind to the truth already walking among them. Ahead, through the void, the deadliest predator in the stars was coming. And Elias Karan was going to meet it face to face. The void above the council's capital world tore open as the Krythar emerged. Its body blotted out the stars, a leviathan cloaked in shadow, plated with scales that shimmered like molten obsidian. Where it moved, light bent. Where it breathed, the air itself seemed to shudder. Fleets of warships scrambled in desperate arcs around the planet, their formation precise, their weapons primed. Their commanders broadcast courage to their crews, but in every voice lurked the tremor of dread. The first salvo lit the darkness. Beams of concentrated energy carved across the void, missile trails spiraled like comet fire, and entire squadrons of drones swarmed forward in waves meant to overwhelm. The Krythar's response was silence, then sudden violence. Its wings, or what passed for them, unfurled, blades of chitin longer than capital ships. A single sweep shredded drones by the hundreds, scattering their wreckage across orbit. A second movement cut a destroyer clean in half, its halves spiraling into flame. Commanders shouted over comms, trying to rally, but their voices faltered as ship after ship died without slowing the monster. Ion cannons carved trenches of light along its scales, but the glow dimmed and died, as though the beast absorbed the fury of weapons and returned it with contempt. Every blast only seemed to quicken its movements, a predator growing more alive the more it was challenged. In the council chambers, delegates screamed in disbelief as real-time projections played out above them. Their proud armada, the glory of a dozen civilizations, was being gutted in less than 10 minutes. Each ship winked out like a candle in a storm. Panic clawed at their voices. Some demanded retreat, others demanded more reinforcements, none willing to admit the truth they had mocked when Elias had spoken it. Far from the chamber, Elias Karan stood in a hangar where silence held heavier than fear. Crew members whispered around him, some praying, some shaking as klaxons blared. He moved with calm precision, strapping on the black harness of his drop suit. Darius Hale stood nearby, jaw tight, as though holding back 100 protests. "You'll never get close," Darius said. "The thing destroys everything it sees." "Then I'll make it see me differently," Elias replied, tightening the last buckle. He lifted his helmet but did not put it on yet. His voice was steady, measured, the same tone he had once used to calm an animal before entering a cage. "Predators don't kill everything. They kill what runs, what challenges, what resists. Sometimes they watch before they strike. Sometimes they listen." Darius shook his head. "This isn't a wolf or a lion. This is death itself." Elias placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Death still listens if you have the right voice." Without waiting for further argument, he strode into the dropship. Its systems hummed alive, shields flickering across its hull. It was no war vessel, just a transport meant for atmospheric entry. Against the Krythar it was nothing more than a spark in the wind, but it was all he needed. The ship lifted, engines flaring, and shot through the hangar shield into the chaos of orbit. Around him, the sky was ablaze with dying ships, wreckage spinning in lethal arcs. The Krythar loomed ahead, vast as a mountain, eyes burning with a pale, cold light that pierced through the void. Every instinct told Elias this was the end, that nothing human, nothing living could survive in its presence. He exhaled slowly, forcing his heartbeat into control, each breath a command to his own body. The comms filled with frantic voices. Unidentified craft, retreat immediately. You are entering the kill zone. Another voice, that fool's ship is unarmed. He'll draw fire on all of us. Elias cut his comms to silence. He needed no distractions. His ship angled toward a barren moon, one scarred and lifeless, circling just outside the Council world's orbit. He landed hard upon its surface, dust plumes rising into the low-gravity sky. Then he walked out. No weapon in hand, no armor bristling with defenses. Only his own presence, the steel of his voice, the control in his movements. The Krythar turned. It sensed him, though he was smaller than the rocks under its claws. A shadow swept across the moon as its colossal frame lowered, wings folding inward, head craning down. Its maw could have swallowed cities. Its breath was a storm. Every step rattled the ground beneath him. Elias stood firm. He did not run. He did not reach for a weapon. He raised his chin, meeting its gaze. When he spoke, his words were quiet but carried weight, the resonance of command shaped not by authority of rank but by certainty of will. I am here, he said. Look at me. Not them. Me. The Krythar's pupils contracted, burning with alien fire. The fleet still fired desperately, plasma lancing across its flanks, but it ignored them. Its focus narrowed onto the single figure standing on the moon's surface. It growled, a sound that cracked stone and churned dust into storms. Still Elias held his ground. His voice lowered, calm, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby threaded with iron. You don't want them. You want me. Hear me. The growl faded into a rumble. The beast's colossal head lowered further, its eye the size of a man's chest, staring into his. For an instant, Elias felt the abyss within that gaze, the weight of countless centuries of hunger and fury. Yet in that abyss there was not mindless malice. There was intent. Curiosity. A question waiting for an answer. Behind him, his dropship shook as Darius's voice cut through comms, urgent, almost breaking. Elias, it's by the stars, it's stopping. It's ignoring the fleets. And it was true. The Predator had shifted its stance, curling around Elias like a wall of living armor, wings half spread in a posture that deflected incoming fire. The fleets that had moments ago been its prey were now irrelevant. Its every muscle was coiled, not in attack but in defense. Defense of the lone human who had dared to speak. Across the council, silence fell as feeds broadcast the impossible. Delegates stared wide-eyed, unable to reconcile what they saw with everything they had believed. The destroyer of empires was obeying a human's voice. Elias breathed slowly, never breaking eye contact with the Titan before him. His words were steady, but his heart thundered. Good. Stay with me. The Krythar rumbled again, lower this time, almost a sound of acknowledgement. In that moment Elias knew the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. Not because the Council had mustered fleets, but because one human had dared to speak, and the deadliest predator in the stars had listened. Dust still swirled across the barren moon, carried on faint currents stirred by the Krythar's sheer mass. The beast coiled protectively around Elias, its scales glinting like fragments of night broken by streaks of fire from the fleets still hammering at its hide. He felt the concussions echoing in his bones, yet the monster did not stir against him. It merely lowered its head, breathing deep, as if listening for something only it could sense. Elias raised one hand slowly, palm outward. The gesture was not command but invitation. His voice followed, firm but quiet, each word a thread woven into rhythm. Stay. With me. Not them. The Krythar rumbled, a sound so deep it was almost the vibration of the ground itself. Then, impossibly, it obeyed. It shifted its wings closer, forming a shield of living armor against the rain of plasma fire. To the Council's eyes, it looked as if the destroyer of fleets had turned bodyguard. In orbit, voices flooded the comms. Commanders shouted to cease fire, others demanded to redouble it, most simply stammered in disbelief. And within the Council chamber itself, panic gave way to fury. Delegates rose from their seats, some shrieking that the human had bewitched the predator, others warning that this was proof of conspiracy. No one spoke the truth aloud, that Elias had succeeded where they had failed for centuries. On the moon's surface he took a cautious step forward. The Crythar's eye tracked him with unblinking intensity. He thought of the scarred shepherd dog he had once calmed in a war zone, its hackles raised, teeth bared, until his voice had steadied it. The same principle echoed here. Predators respected presence, not threats. They answered confidence with recognition. He exhaled through his nose, grounding himself. The Crythar exhaled as well, a gust of hot air that smelled of metal and stormfire, strong enough to whip his jacket against his body. Elias did not flinch. That was the test always. Fear broke the connection. "Good," he said quietly. "That's it. You know me now." From his ship, Darius's voice cracked through the private comm, hushed with awe. "Elias, it's following you. Do you understand what that means?" Elias's eyes never left the predators. "I understand that it sees something it respects. That's enough." The Crythar shifted, claws gouging trenches into the moon's crust. Then, with a fluid motion that belied its bulk, it lowered its head further until its snout touched the dust just feet from Elias. The gesture carried weight older than the council itself. Submission or perhaps recognition. Watching from orbit, fleets faltered, their commanders frozen between awe and terror. One ship fired a final torpedo. The Crythar snapped its wing outward, shielding Elias, letting the blast explode harmlessly across its scales. Then it roared, not at Elias but at the heavens, a sound that shattered the last semblance of control among the fleets. Many broke formation, fleeing rather than risk the predator's wrath. Elias waited until silence fell again. Then, slowly, he reached out and laid his hand against the surface of the Crythar's muzzle. The scale beneath his palm was warm, thrumming with power like a living engine. For an instant he thought it might lash out. Instead, it went utterly still, as if acknowledging the contact. The image transmitted back to the council chamber froze every delegate mid-breath. A human, insignificant in size, standing before the galaxy's deadliest predator, hand resting on its snout as though calming a restless steed. No one could deny what they saw. The High Speaker's feathers bristled with outrage. "This is impossible. No predator bows to prey. This is a manipulation." A tusked warlord snarled. "No. This is worse. The human commands it. If that is true, he commands the fate of us all." The chamber dissolved into chaos. Some demanded Elias be hailed as savior, others called for his immediate execution. But none could look away from the broadcast. On the moon, Elias stepped back, gauging the Crythar's reaction. It remained still, watching, waiting. He tried a second gesture, a sweep of his arm to the side, and the beast shifted with him, mirroring his movement. His heart pounded, not with fear but realization. This was no mindless destroyer. This was something crafted, engineered with purpose. Its instincts were feral, yes, but underneath was a structure, a design meant to respond to leadership. Someone, in some forgotten era, had bred obedience into the bones of terror. Darius's voice returned, steadier now but filled with weight. "It's protecting you. Do you hear yourself? You've made it your ally." Elias shook his head. "Not ally. Not yet. But it's listening. That's more than anyone else has managed." The Crythar lifted its head again, its gaze following him as he walked toward his dropship. With a fluid leap, it surged upward, wings unfurling, carrying its colossal body into orbit with frightening grace. Dust storms tore across the moon in its wake. Elias shielded his eyes, then followed into his ship, heart pounding with the enormity of what had just begun. When he rose back into space he saw it waiting. The predator's vast form hovered beside his small craft, wings folded inward, its movements measured as if matching his own. Where it had once torn through fleets, it now slowed its pace to follow him, as though tethered not by chains but by choice. Council feeds broadcast the impossible sight. A human vessel drifting beside the Crythar without harm, the predator pacing its course like a shadow bound to its master. Across the galaxy, billions watched in silence. Elias knew the storm this would unleash. The council would not rejoice that he had calmed the beast. They would fear what it meant, that a single human now held sway over something greater than their armadas. They would see not salvation but threat. He exhaled, a whisper meant only for himself. "So be it." In the chamber, the High Speaker slammed her staff, her voice shrill with desperation. "This cannot stand. The Crythar belongs to no one, least of all a human. Seize him, destroy it before the balance is broken." But balance was already gone. The galaxy had seen the truth. The deadliest predator in the stars had chosen not the council, not their fleets, but the voice of a human. And Elias Caron, standing at the center of it all, understood that his life had just crossed into something far larger than survival. The question now was not whether he could control the Krythar, but whether he could endure the weight of what that control meant. The predator's pale eyes lingered on him, unblinking, unreadable. In their depths he saw not only power but a silent demand. A bond had been formed, but bonds came with consequences. As the council screamed for retribution and fleets scrambled to regroup, Elias knew the path forward would demand more than voice and presence. It would demand loyalty, from him as much as from the beast. The Krythar rumbled, low and patient as if waiting for his answer. Elias closed his eyes for a heartbeat, then whispered into the void, "We'll find out together." And with that, the predator turned with him, gliding into the dark, leaving the galaxy stunned and afraid of what a single human had just begun. The council chambers no longer buzzed with debate, they boiled with venom. The image of Elias standing before the Krythar, hand pressed against its monstrous snout, still hovered above the assembly in endless replay. Every delegate saw it, and every repetition deepened the wound to their pride. Armadas had crumbled under the predator's claws, but the human had tamed it with nothing more than a voice. To the council this was not a miracle. It was an existential threat. Behind the chamber's guarded doors, emissaries whispered of betrayal. Some argued that Elias should be elevated as champion, perhaps even granted a permanent seat. More, however, demanded his destruction. A human with power over the apex terror of the stars was a blade held to every throat in the galaxy. None of their fleets could stop him if he chose to wield it. Fear, not awe, was the fuel of their deliberations. Elias himself walked the corridors of the orbital station in silence. The Krythar lingered in the void beyond, circling the council world like a silent guardian. Entire patrol wings refused to approach while it was near, and even civilian ships gave wide berth. It had become his shadow, visible in every sky, its very presence a reminder that he had done what no alien had dared dream. He bore that knowledge with calm resolve, though he felt the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes pressing on his back. Darius intercepted him outside his quarters, expression grim. "They're moving against you. The vote isn't official yet, but I've read the channels. They'll brand you a danger to stability. Some are even calling for execution." Elias didn't break stride. "I expected as much." "You're not taking this seriously enough," Darius pressed. "They're terrified, Elias. They don't want balance. They want control. And if they can't control you, they'll kill you." "They can try," Elias murmured, keying his door open. Inside, the lights glowed dim, but even here he felt the pull of the predator outside, a presence etched into his awareness. He turned to Darius. "They think the Krythar is a weapon like their fleets or cannons. They don't understand it. That's why they fear it, and me." Darius leaned against the frame, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Maybe they don't understand. But that doesn't make their fear less dangerous." The truth of that settled heavily between them. Elias sat at the desk, eyes on the datapad stacked there, filled with intercepted communiques. He had skimmed enough to confirm what Darius warned. Plots nested within plots, veiled threats cloaked as diplomacy, quiet orders given to council enforcers. They weren't waiting for permission. They were already moving. That night the attempt came. Silent infiltrators slipped through the station's maintenance shafts, their weapons built for precision kills, their armor tuned against human physiology. Elias lay awake when he felt the shift, the subtle hum of the air recyclers interrupted, the faint scrape of movement where none should be. He was out of bed before the first intruder breached his door. The strike was swift, but Elias was swifter. Years of covert training came back with brutal clarity, the grip of a wrist twisted until bones snapped, the sharp strike of elbow against throat, the angle of a blade turned against its wielder. 3 bodies fell before they made a sound. The 4th managed a cry, but it was cut short by the tremor of the station itself. The Krythar had sensed danger. Its roar thundered through the void, rattling the walls as though the moon itself were cracking. Alarms blared across the station as its colossal form pressed closer, claws scraping the edge of the docking ring. Sirens wailed, systems flickered, and in the chaos Elias stood amidst the fallen assassins, blood on his hands, breathing steady. Darius burst into the room, blaster drawn, eyes wide at the carnage. "They actually send hunters after you." "They'll send more," Elias replied coldly, wiping his hands. "And each time the Krythar will answer louder." And it did. Every time a squadron tried to approach his quarters, the predator surged closer, its presence a warning none dared ignore. It destroyed unmanned drones sent to probe it, and when manned ships opened fire in panic, it tore them apart with a fury that shook the station's foundation. Only Elias's voice through a calm link pulled it back from slaughter. The predator obeyed when he commanded restraint, shocking even himself with the precision of its response. This only deepened the council's hatred. Now they saw him not as savior but as tyrant in waiting. His restraint meant nothing to them. They saw only that he could unleash devastation at will. Rumors spread like wildfire, that the Krythar was Earth's secret weapon, that humanity had bred it for conquest, that Elias had seized it to crown himself ruler of the stars. None were true, but all gained traction because fear made them plausible. Elias walked into the council chamber once more, every delegate's gaze sharpened to a blade's edge. He felt no need to dress his words in ceremony. You can keep throwing soldiers at me. You can keep calling me a threat. None of that changes the truth. The Krythar isn't your enemy. Neither am I. But if you force my hand, you'll make me into what you fear. The High Speaker rose, feathers bristling. You dare threaten this assembly? I state fact, Elias answered evenly. You rule by fear, but fear isn't leadership. That creature outside, your greatest terror, bows to will, not fear. That's why it listens to me. That's why it ignores you. The uproar was immediate, furious, venomous. Darius stood beside him, one hand near his sidearm, knowing the danger in the room was more immediate than the predator circling above. The High Speaker slammed her staff, voice trembling with outrage. Enough. Guards, seize him. Dozens of armored enforcers closed in, weapons ready. Elias felt the surge of tension ripple through the chamber. Outside, the Krythar stirred, its growl reverberating across the station hull. Enforcers hesitated, glancing nervously at the ceiling as if the beast could break through at any moment. But the council had prepared. Hidden batteries powered up along the orbital ring, ancient weapons forbidden by treaty. Massive ion cannons rotated into position, locking onto both Elias's vessel and the predator beyond. The High Speaker's voice cut through the noise. The human has overstepped. The beast has defied our authority. Both shall be purged in one stroke for the safety of the galaxy. Elias turned toward the chamber's projection screens, where he saw the glimmer of charged energy building across the station's guns. He knew what was coming. Even the Krythar felt it. The predator shifted, wings unfurling, sensing the trap. Darius, Elias said quietly, never taking his eyes from the sight. When it happens, stay behind me. The cannons fired. Arcs of searing light enveloped predator and human alike. Energy nets spread across the void, binding the Krythar in a cage of crackling force. Elias's body locked as his cuffs surged with restraint fields, pain tearing through his nerves. Delegates roared in triumph as both predator and man were captured at once. The chamber echoed with cries of victory, but beneath their celebration lurked something brittle, something fragile. They had snared their terror and the man who commanded it, but none could shake the memory of what they had already seen, the predator lowering its head to a human's hand. As Elias was dragged from the chamber, restraints burning into his wrists, he met Darius's eyes. His voice was hoarse but unbroken. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. And in the void, the Krythar strained against its bindings, its pale eyes still fixed on the human it had chosen, waiting for the moment his voice would call again. The chamber where Elias had been confined was silent but for the faint hum of the restraints coiled around his wrists. Each pulse of energy was meant to sap his strength, to remind him of helplessness, yet his eyes burned with unshaken defiance. He had endured worse than pain. What the council failed to understand was that they had not captured him. They had provoked the bond between man and beast to its breaking point. Beyond the station's walls, the Krythar writhed against the lattice of ion nets. Its roars were soundless in the void, but the vibrations carried through metal hull and reinforced glass, a trembling dirge of fury that no being on the station could ignore. Engineers screamed at failing readouts as the predator's body pressed against containment fields designed only in theory, never tested against the living force of nature. Every time it surged, the lattice flared brighter, and entire decks flickered with lost power. Elias sat motionless, breathing slow, though inside his thoughts were coiled tight as springs. Darius had been separated from him at the chamber's entrance, likely locked in another wing. The council believed the human strength lay in allies, but they were wrong. It lay in connection in the bond no one else dared to claim. When the guards entered to drag him before the council for judgment, Elias rose without resistance. The march through the corridor felt endless, flanked by armored enforcers whose nervous eyes flicked repeatedly toward the ceiling. They too heard the roars. The predator's anguish was a drumbeat above them, and with every step Elias felt its rage bleeding into his bones. The council thought they had severed man from beast, but they had only sharpened the tether. The chamber doors parted and a surge of alien voices filled the air. Delegates leaned forward on their platforms, eyes glittering with triumph. At the center stood the High Speaker, feathers sleek, staff raised. Human Elias Vare. You are charged with disruption of order, unlawful control of a weaponized entity, and defiance of council decree. Sentence: termination. The words struck the air like blades, but Elias felt no fear. He lifted his head, meeting the eyes of every delegate. You cannot kill what you do not understand. Defiance even now, the High Speaker hissed. She gestured, and the ion cannons outside prepared for final discharge. This ends tonight. The beast will be destroyed. The man erased. For a moment silence fell. Then Elias closed his eyes and whispered, not loudly, not with desperation, but with the steady calm of command. Now. The chamber trembled. Outside, the Krythar unleashed itself with a violence that shredded the void. Nets that had glowed with caged brilliance ruptured like fragile glass, their energy cascading into uncontrolled arcs that ripped along the station's hull. Sections of the orbital ring tore free as if struck by a god's hand. Through the viewing screens, delegates watched in horror as the predator spread its wings wide, eyes glowing like suns, every line of its body burning with the will to obey the voice it had chosen. The guards around Elias staggered, some collapsing as systems failed. Restraints flickered, then died, severed by the predator's howl echoing through electromagnetic currents. Freed, Elias stood tall, the storm's eye within chaos. Darius, he said, voice clear and as if summoned by fate, his companion forced open a side door, bruised and bloodied but alive, a stolen rifle in his grasp. He tossed a sidearm to Elias, and in that instant the tide shifted. The council chamber dissolved into panic. Delegates scrambled for exits, their unity shattered, their authority burned away by fear greater than any law. Enforcers turned weapons on the humans, but the Krythar's shadow fell across the viewport, blotting out the stars. Its roar shook loose panels, sending shards raining down as if the station itself bent to its wrath. Elias fired not at soldiers but at the ceiling supports, collapsing barriers that split the chamber. Smoke and fire filled the air. Through it all, he strode forward, Darius at his side, both men moving with the precision of comrades long tested in survival. The High Speaker tried to rally the delegates, raising her staff, shouting of unity and order, but her words broke beneath the predator's next strike. One entire platform tore loose, tumbling into the void as the hull split wide. Emergency fields snapped into place, sealing the breach, but the chamber was reduced to chaos. At the dais, Elias mounted the steps, smoke curling around him, eyes never leaving the High Speaker. You wanted control. You wanted to cage what you feared. Look at it now. She trembled but spat her venom. You are no savior. You are a tyrant with a leash on death itself. No, Elias said, voice like iron. I am proof that fear does not command. Will does. At his words, the Krythar lowered itself to the viewport, vast head filling the chamber with its presence. Pale eyes locked on Elias. It did not strike. It did not rage. It bowed, its massive form bent in deference to a single human's will. The silence that followed was greater than any roar. Delegates stared, unable to deny the truth laid bare before them. Authority had failed. Power had failed. Only the bond endured. Elias turned from the beast to the chamber. You can keep ruling by fear, clinging to authority that breaks the moment it is challenged. Or you can learn. You can see that the galaxy's greatest predator chose to obey, not because of chains, not because of terror, but because it found a voice worth listening to. That is the future. Not decrees. Not weapons. Choice. His words hung heavy, reverberating against the smoke and shattered stone. The council had no answer. The High Speaker's staff slipped from her grasp, striking the floor with a hollow ring. Darius stepped to Elias's side, whispering low. They'll never forget this. Even if they bow now, they'll plot again. Elias nodded slightly, eyes still fixed on the chamber. Let them plot. So long as the Krythar listens, they'll never strike without trembling. The predator loosed a final growl, not of fury but of warning, vibrating through every strut of the station. Then, at Elias's unspoken command, it withdrew, wings spreading wide as it soared into the void, free yet ever tethered by choice alone. In the chamber no delegate spoke. They knew the old order had cracked. A man had stood against them, and the galaxy's deadliest predator had bowed. Elias holstered the weapon and turned for the exit, Darius close beside him. This isn't about me anymore, he murmured as the chamber doors closed behind them. It's about what they'll do, knowing the beast ignores them but obeys a human voice. And somewhere in the vast expanse of stars the Krythar roared, not as a monster, not as a weapon, but as a sentinel bound by will, its fury chained only by trust in the one man it had chosen. The story of Elias Vare would spread across the stars, whispered in fear, spoken in awe, etched into the marrow of civilizations. For the first time in memory the council trembled not at an enemy fleet or a rising empire, but at a man who had taught death itself to listen. And in that tremble lay the seed of a new order.